Good. Welcome to the December meeting of the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. I'd like to call to order the meeting at 6:31. I think before we get started, we were just hoping to do some introductions real quick. There are some new names on the Zoom call. Welcome. And we'll probably start within the room if that's okay, and then we'll do the agenda approval after that. So my name is Val Eisel, I'm the board president.
Matt Kramer, board member.
Mark Ernest, board member. Benjamin Carp, board member.
Marcy Bean, I'm a landscape architect with Bar Engineering.
Nicole Morris, I'm the permit coordinator with the watershed.
Paige Albert, project manager with the watershed. Tina Carson's administrator, watershed.
Erin Anderson-Wenz, engineer with Bar Engineering Company.
Perfect. And then we move to online. Is it easy to, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Looks like
yeah. Good evening. I'm Andrew Hogg. I'm with the City of St. Paul and DSI zoning. I'm the LGU for the City of St. Paul, and I'm here to listen to the Heights presentation.
Thanks, Andrew. Lydia.
I'm Lydia Major. I'm a landscape architect working at LHB on behalf of the St. Paul Port Authority on the Heights project.
Great. And Catherine.
Good evening, Catherine Sarnicki. I'm the Chief Development Officer with the St. Paul Port Authority, and we're excited to tell you more about what's going on at the Heights.
You and Kristen.
Kristen Seaman, City of Woodbury.
Great. And Paul.
Paul Erdman with the Watershed Natural Resource Program Manager.
And Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Kibitz, a water quality technician with the Watershed District.
Dave.
David Lawson, watershed staff.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. So may I have first any changes to the agenda? No. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Say that as a part of my job, we disclosed this last meeting, but I work for Ramsey County Parks and Recreation. There's a number of programs in the consent agenda that are happening on county property, as well as a department that I'm not affiliated with that will be approving a service agreement with. I don't see any conflict of interest on my part, but wanted to disclose that.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and let Pam get situated. I had one question on the stewardship grant application. Trying to exercise some of the learning that was acquired during the conference. I was trying to get a sense if there was a question at all about the riprap being necessary on that particular landscape area or not, or if that was something that.
Yeah, so a lot of the properties over here have existing riprap.
Okay.
So yeah, so we tend not to use it. We're actually adding some bio D block too, which is a little more natural. This is bio B, but I think it's bio. Anyways, but so that gives it a little more natural look, but because they already have it,
okay.
Use it.
So because it was already present.
Yeah, and these slopes, they're existing very, very steep, so we're trying to.
They get a lot of wave action on the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. That was the only question I had.
I had a question. Fortunately, my computer is not booting up yet, so I'm going by memory. I believe it was one of the permit projects in Shoreview. And there was a comment about stabilization of soils for winter, and I'm just partly out of curiosity, but also my own education, just with techniques, especially we're not getting snow
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, the hydro seed type, weeds for mulch or.
Yeah. Was this on one of the permit applications or the enforcement report?
I don't want the permit applications within the consent agenda, but. Sure. Yeah. Well, it would make more sense that it would be in the enforcement, which means it's not.
Sure, I can speak generally on soil stabilization. Do you want to do that now or like?
You can.
Okay. Yeah, there's a number of practices that are used. The state construction permit requires that any inactive soil on a site is stabilized either within 7 days or within 14 days, depending on its proximity to impaired waters and other special waters and things of that nature. And then there's other exceptions, but I won't get into that. Generally speaking, they have about 1 to 2 weeks to stabilize inactive soils. How they do that is dependent on the slope in question, season, as you mentioned. A lot of times we'll see bears in that green kind of tacky hydromulch is used quite frequently, unless the soils are covered with snow already, or if temperatures are too cold to actually apply it. Other winter stabilization can be like straw mulch, wood chips. You can even use poly, like plastic sheeting, for steep slopes that are other great way to stabilize, and it's just temporary. And then final stabilization would include seed, sod, vegetation, establishment. That answers.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on consent agenda topics? No. Okay, all in favor of passing the consent agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
So we're gonna move on to visitor comments, given the introductions. I'm assuming that there are no visitor comments. Is that accurate? I'm gonna take everybody on mute, meaning there are no comments. So why don't we go ahead and move to the permit program?
For the enforcement report, if there's any additional questions on sort of the month's activities or project updates, I can certainly answer them or try to answer them.
What is meant by a hired SWPPP inspection for the heights, out of curiosity? It's just a new thing. I didn't know that they could do that.
Yeah, you might have seen in special provisions quite frequently, it refers to a SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Yeah.
So that's all their erosion control, pollution prevention activities during construction. So on the site, I assume you're referring to the heights.
Yeah, they said that they hired a new inspector specifically for that.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
it's such a large site.
Okay.
And they have a dedicated person to be doing erosion control inspections and communicating with the contractor about what's needed. So they represent the owner or the Port Authority, but they're a private company. And this is common on a lot of large street projects as well. Like MnDOT will have sometimes hired people just for that purpose. Like the Gold Line Metro Transit has one from a different company. Kind of trying to coordinate, because there's all these subcontractors on these large projects as well, and sometimes they might have more expertise than like a general contractor superintendent might.
It was just the first time I had seen it, so that sounds very proactive. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any further questions on the inspection report?
No, I'm just trying to figure out where Marge's house is on this map. Oh. The Heights map. Oh, she's right up. Marge, who used to be our president, lives in, her house is one of these here.
Her house was one of the consent agenda, okay?
No, she's in the, I'm just looking at the heights map of number.
Oh.
I think this is her house here.
What's the light?
She lives right, yeah, her road abuts it.
That's cool.
Any other questions on the enforcement action report?
Yeah, you want to take us to the, are you gonna walk us through the second piece on the Heights redevelopment?
Yeah, I think before I introduce the sites presentation, I'll just mention, I think for Kristen's benefit, if she's listening in for the Woodbury Central Park permit, it's easy to miss, but that permit was approved. If you're want to hang out for other reasons, feel free. Just wanted to let you know. So yeah, next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Lydia from LHB on the public amenities being proposed for the Heights, the next phases of development. I did attach the initial permit that was approved earlier this year. I attached the initial variance request for some context about what was previously approved with regard to the wetlands and the wetland buffers. If there were questions on that. But essentially, the first phase of the permit approved the initial wetland impacts, the wetland mitigation, the mass grading, soil remediation, demo, all of that was included in that 23-17 permit. So design's progressing now into the roadways, the shared stormwater infrastructure, stormwater treatment practices, and then there's also an element of public amenities, open space plans, and that's what we wanted to share with you tonight. There's no board action being requested. This is just preliminary comments so that they can have a little bit more confidence as they keep going with design. Would like to know, initial comments, concerns with what's being proposed in and around the wetland areas specifically. We haven't finalized review on all the stormwater practices, so that's kind of absent from tonight's discussion, but we have done a preliminary review and sent comments to the applicant. So that's not finalized by any means, but is there any questions before I kick it back to LHB? Lydia, are you ready?
I'm ready if you are.
Yeah.
Lydia, maybe I'll just jump in and say a few words. Catherine from the St. Paul Port Authority, thank you so much for allowing us to present this to you. Really, the work has been done by Lydia and her amazing team at LHB on the landscape work. But we're really excited. We're trying to do more than just sort of standard wetland stuff and really trying to amenitize them and make them a place-making space where you want to be. But we want to make sure that we're respecting the watershed's guidelines and rules and barriers. So please look at this with a critical eye and give us feedback on what's working for you guys, what's not, as we try and make this a really cool project for the east side. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Looks like a presentation similar to what you have in your packet.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, very good. I'm going to provide a little bit of context about our overall approach to the landscape for the Heights as a whole. We have done months and years of community engagement, worked with the city on the master plan, developed a LEED Platinum pre-approved project, and done a lot of other sort of pre-work that has led to where we are today. So as we looked at all of that input, especially that from the community, the goals that they had for sustainability, for community gathering spaces, et cetera, we came up with some vision for this project. We want to incorporate play and gathering. We want to interactive elements, placemaking elements, as Catherine mentioned earlier. Materials, colors, and forms are very important to us. We also want the landscape itself to express the sustainability features that we have. We are really, really pressing as far forward as we can on diversity and habitat creation, of using reclaimed materials, regenerative design. And what might interest this group the most is probably allowing processes like stormwater and wetland change to be expressed and seen by the public. We call our overall concept ebb and flow. It's a very curvilinear concept, which probably will contrast with the buildings that we expect to see built here, especially on the light industrial side. We want to embrace this site's topography. As many of you already know, this golf course did not originally have all of its rolling hills, and a lot of it is man-made. We have to continue that tradition, partly because of the soil corrections and grading that are required for this project. And so we are going to use that as a method for expressing these forms that we find to be compelling for the public. We want to accentuate views. We want to use vegetation to accentuate those curves as well. And we want to provide prospect and refuge. So it's really a lot about the experience for people visiting this site. Another thing that we wanted to think about carefully was how the site's different spots, different places work in different ways. So on the diagram you're seeing right now, we're going to spend most of our time tonight talking about these wetland and stormwater spaces. And I want to be clear that north is to your left here, so it's maybe a little different view than you've sometimes seen of this site. We also have spaces that are along the public rights of way. We have trail connections, and we have sort of the in-between spaces like buffers and so on. And of course, we can't forget that the city is also developing an active park on this site. So the spaces that we are designing, particularly in these different areas, are more passive in their nature, although they have some elements of play, as you'll see. We don't want you to think that we are changing the game on you. We are respecting the sort of mitigation plans that have already been produced, and we plan to use the seed mixes and other things that have already been shown to you. We are proposing, however, to add some additional perennial plugs and trees in different species and sizes. We want to have a more layered landscape approach that functions more like a native wetland or stormwater area might be expected to do. So here we are in wetland C, which is the northernmost one. I'll just go back up for one moment. We are calling this one Vista because we're landscape architects, and C wasn't quite descriptive enough. So this one is really sort of an interesting approach. It's one of the, it's approached from the main spine street over a district stormwater underground system, and then you emerge at the wetland. So we want it to, and it reaches on the other end of it, it will cross the road to the park. So we wanted to have sort of a feeling of connectivity here. We wanted to have a park-like space leading to the vista. We have more active spaces here because the district stormwater system underground gives us that opportunity. And we want to bring people to the wetland and let them experience that with a sense of whimsy and play. So here's our proposed plan for the space as it currently stands. Here is the main spine road called Howard over here. This is actually our proposed sidewalk. And you can see that as it approaches the vista and that district stormwater spot, which is right underneath this east-west connection, we get a more curvilinear space. There's some stormwater elements that are kind of working around the sidewalk. And we've been talking to Andrew Hogg and others about how that would work. Then people approach on the vista. We actually have, this is near the existing high point on the site. It's actually a man-made high point as it currently stands, and it would continue to be sort of a sculptural landform like that. But we continue to have a small gathering space here. And then the trail connection crosses some play areas, has some gathering spaces and seating areas, continues down. And then as we get to the edge of the wetland itself, we provide an ADA accessible route. So it has a few switchbacks. It also has some stair connections in different locations, and then some seating elements that overlook the wetland. The wetland itself is approximately here, and the line in green is the minimum wetland setback. So you can see that we are keeping all the hardscape outside of the setback. However, within the setback, we do have some areas where we are requesting the ability to put in boardwalk. We think this is a great opportunity for people to see how an urban wetland can function and to provide interpretation and an experience that is unique in this location. So we have connections to the sidewalks all around it, and then the ability to walk through the space and experience the wetland in different ways on that boardwalk. This heavy line right here is an existing, or not existing, it's proposed wall that's been in previous plans, so that is not new. And then you can see some of those tree plantings that we've been talking about here. I also wanted to note that for maintenance of the stormwater elements, we do need to be able to get a vehicle through. So this heavy dashed line shows how we would use the trails that we're designing, as well as a reinforced turf area here. And then we'll be working with an adjacent landowner here to have that maintenance path make a doable connection near this area. Would you like me to pause for questions as we go through, or should I present the other areas and then we can circle back for questions?
It's a good question. I kind of like hearing the whole pitch together and then come back if that's okay.
I have one quick question while you're on this.
Yeah.
The boardwalk, is it envisioned that that boardwalk would be through a vegetated area, or is it envisioned it would be more water, right at the edge of the water? Do you have a sense?
So we will keep it in shallow areas at the most. We do have it, I think, touching some areas like this overlook where you may begin to see a little bit of open water, but my understanding is that this will not be in deep water by any stretch and will be more at the vegetated edges.
Thank you.
In conjunction with that, as long as we're talking about the boardwalk, I don't know that you're this far in your construction documentation, but you know if that's going to be a floating boardwalk, helical piles. I know the watershed in the past has looked at helical piles as known that impact, so I guess maybe more of something just the design team to keep in mind and work with Nicole as you go through permitting.
Yeah, we do plan to work with Nicole on which kinds of construction work best. I think helical piles have been discussed. We've also talked about the pad foot style, but we do know that those can have more of an impact, and we are very cognizant of wanting to minimize that impact. We also want to make sure that we time the installation of the boardwalk to work with the installation of the plants and seed mixes that are going in, so that this would all sort of time out well together and not disrupt those establishing plant regimes.
Question. What class of wetland is Wetland C or Vista? Is it like high quality or horrible quality?
It's a mitigated wetland, so it's
B. It's class B.
Okay, thank you.
There are two, the next two, the A ones are coming up next.
Oh yeah, sorry. Wetland C, yeah, B.
We got the answer. Thank you.
I can hear. Sounded like you're working it out. Okay, so I'll move on and we can always come back if you'd like. Here's just a conceptual image of the vista. This is looking from up the area of Howard toward the wetlands. You're not seeing the wetland itself here, but sort of the connection with the integration of walks, seating, and the stormwater elements.
So are we looking north, kind of?
This is actually looking east. So you're standing, trying to take you back up. We're standing somewhere on here looking east.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. This image is kind of like you're standing in the wetland, looking back towards the trail. Here's the boardwalk. Here's some of that stair area that we're talking about with some seating elements built into the hillside. Again, this makes it look like we're right up against the wetland edge. That is an artist's interpretation. We are not quite that close right at this moment, but it does allow us to have the hardscape outside of the minimum buffer, the boardwalk inside of it, and then sort of have the overlook of the wetland. So next we're going to talk about wetland D, which also has a stormwater adjacent to it. So the wetland itself is here. You can see again, we're going to have the green minimum buffer around it. This is a new mitigation wetland next to it. I shouldn't have called it a stormwater, I'm sorry about that, but another mitigated wetland here with some grading around it, and its minimum buffer is kind of floating around like that. Similar information here that has been part of the plans that you've previously seen. This one is a little bit of a lighter touch. We have a few play elements here because we have some upland area between the two wetlands. But again, some stormwater and some curving moments, less gathering space and less hardscape overall. Here's the plan as it's currently conceived. At the north end, we have a connection. You can see where we are in space, by the way, over on the key plan. So we have the roadway connection at the north. We have a trail connection at the south and sidewalks again and a road at the east side. And in this case, we're using just small stretch of boardwalk to cross the minimum buffer. So we, again, minimize impacts anywhere we are in those buffers. And then in the middle, we're proposing a small nature play area with a couple of benches and things. Some of this will be using some of the trees that we salvaged on site. Some of the benches will also be from those salvaged trees. And you can see again, sort of mixing in understory and overstory trees along with the seed mixes that are already proposed. Much simpler plan here. See if I have here's another artist image of what this experience might be like. Do I have any questions about this one before I move on?
Okay.
Okay. Last, we have wetland H. So here's the existing sort of keyed plan with buffer areas and mitigation areas shown. This one is primarily a linear walking experience with a few moments of pause, but no major elements of gathering space here at all. We have some thoughts here about boardwalk, about bird blinds. We really want people to feel more immersed in the wetland experience in this case. And partly due to the amount of this lot that's taken with the buffer itself and the wetland itself, we are really just proposing a linear boardwalk experience and some moments where if somebody could sit, maybe a bird blind, there may be interpretive elements or public art elements incorporated with this one, but you can see that it's a fairly, like I said, a more immersive experience in the wetland as opposed to being as focused on gathering spaces. So with that, that was what I wanted to show you as a starting point, but I'm happy to answer more questions or to revisit one of these in more detail.
Why don't we open it up? Any questions right now?
In terms of the aesthetic, for mitigation wetland, is it C? And I believe this one was H that you just had there.
Yeah.
When I look at them, there are a couple of rather stark corners. And I understand as mitigation, there's, you know, areas that has to be considered. And I'm just wondering if some of those angles could be softened.
Can you give me?
So it's maybe not as much in the concept of access and viewing and experience, but it does touch on the experience that, you know, when you have those very sharp angles, that's not really a natural look.
Are you talking about the layout of the grading of the wetlands themselves?
Yes, more so.
Okay, so
already approved in phase 1. So those
So we can't go back.
Right, the size, shape and existing buffers are, already planned for, and in some cases already graded.
And I can kick off on a couple other comments in addition to that. I really like strategy of trying to involve the public. It's something that I know we prioritize with our art projects, the signage, educational outreach. It's really important to us. So that's a huge pro here. And really the images they're visually striking and well done. I think where I find myself at an interesting crossroads is that, although me personally enjoying and liking the images, we're at a weird conflict where some of those buffers, I know boardwalks don't directly impact buffers, but the purpose of buffers are for water quality and ensuring proper absorption, and they're kind of in contrast to some of the directions that are going. So like, I have small kids, and looking, for example, at relax and play, the natural play area, is that really performing as a buffer? I don't know. The father in me says this is a great opportunity for kids to see and all that stuff, but then the regulatory part of me is like, okay, I don't know if these things are actually having an impact. And the second piece that I look at, and I appreciate respecting the minimum buffer in a lot of these cases, but I don't know the utility of kind of that average, like if we're really adhering to that average buffer rule. And I think that puts me at this interesting position of saying, okay, I know what y'all are trying to do. I love it. But looking at our responsibility for the wetlands, are we going too far into some of these changes? And that's kind of where I'm hesitant for just a direct comment.
I do appreciate that, and we kept that in mind as we were considering. And in this one in particular, you'll notice that we are looking at more of a soft surface trail, and our nature play area itself would not be a hard surface. So we're not suggesting putting impervious hard surfaces in between these two buffers. That might not satisfy your concern. I understand that, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear from what you're seeing on the screen.
Oh yeah, and it's more of, when I think buffers, I think of certain type of plants that are growing in that area. I think of really rich plant growth. Yeah, thank you for that long day, right? We all work together. So and when I look at it, it's just added. I have no idea if that makes the buffer less effective or if it's okay. I have a very difficult time judging it. And so that's kind of my stance. So as you're looking through the plans and you're trying to understand it, I want to include the public. I think it's exactly where we need to go, but did we over-index on some of these designs?
This is one where we adjusted the buffer so that there could be public involvement, so I personally like what they're doing, and if it is like a mulch bed, it's going to infiltrate to some extent, so I would say it is doing its job as a buffer if these are kept to soft surfaces and the boardwalks on vehicle piles, which are known that impact water slides through. So I guess that was my point of view on this space.
This is I think probably more a comment in support of yours just now. I don't have it in front of me, but I think this area is a socioeconomic area. Not necessarily high poverty, but an area of the city that's challenged. And if I were going to lean from a regulatory standpoint, I would lean more towards Ben's comments, amenities over pure regulatory.
But are there too many amenities, or are there just the right amount in these designs? I think about the maintenance, and I think about the trails and what we have to do there. Not we, but what has to be done there. That's where I'm torn, and that's why I'm looking for.
In the end, this is supposed to be also a pretty dense development. So incorporating places for people to get outdoors, I think, is really important. So I don't think there's too many.
Just glad that there's a landscape architect involved in the whole plan.
Thank you for that.
I would probably find myself in a similar camp to what Ben is saying. I think that there's been a fair amount of examination of buffers, and buffers can have some variability in terms of their width and still have functional results. Yet the part that maybe pulls me a little bit is I don't think we want to not, try to keep people out, but we're trying to make this amenity to where it, people come in and things like going off the trail and compaction and side trails and, starts to have some effects on the vegetation, and that can cumulatively, have some degradation in what is considered to be more of the natural buffer in that area. And I think by having the designated boardwalk and maybe some play space, that hopefully reduces that chance. But you got to kind of, walk that line. Maybe signage, whatever, it'd be a great interpretive kind of opportunity. Talk about sensitivity as well. I mean, things like that.
We would love to do the interpretive signage in these areas. And I think, for instance, in this case, having that signage be more aimed at children, whereas in the more southern one, having it, a little more sophisticated information. I think there's a really seriously excellent opportunity here, and the community is very interested in those. When we did community engagement, they really wanted to have those natural areas to learn about their urban environment. So I think it is a tremendous opportunity.
No motion needed.
No. Any other feedback for them?
Looks great. Thank you.
This is helpful for me too, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
Catherine, for being here.
Awesome. Let's jump to stewardship grant program.
Alright.
You have a presentation.
All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna skip the budget status update, and we'll just go over all of that in the presentation. So I'll just give you some highlights from 2023 and talk about some potential upcoming projects and maybe some changes for the 2024 grant program. Overall, really busy year with the stewardship grants. We had 51 projects approved, which in comparison last year, we had 34 projects, and that seemed like a busy year. Typically we have anywhere, 25 to 30. There have been years kind of in the upper 40s, but I think this is one of the busier project years, which is exciting. Not all of these were structural BMPs, like things in the ground. We had quite a few street sweeping grants, a few aquatic vegetation harvesting, a couple signage grants. So not everything's in the ground, but still a lot of cool projects going on. And then we had 2 targeted retrofit projects I'll talk about. So here's the allocation of funding. You can see a little bit more detail on the actual budget status update in the board packet, but just wanted to highlight a few things. We have about 191,000 in unallocated funds that will be carried over from next year. It was nice to see, we're always pushing for those priority area infiltration or filtration projects. We had 4 this year, which is great to see. Obviously that's where we want the majority of our funding to be spent. So nice to see those coming in and still promoting those with our city and county partners, that they can utilize these funds if they have projects in those areas. We had quite a few residential rain gardens come through, but definitely the majority was in that habitat restoration category. So just, I think we're still seeing with the effects of the drought, people are realizing that they don't want to irrigate with potable water and they don't want to mow and have a brown yard. So we saw a lot of turf conversion and native plantings going in, which was great. A lot of people doing kind of phase 2 of their project site. So realizing that they can kind of manage what they have and wanting to take on more, which is always fun to see. Let's see. Yeah, so we did this year, we had a lot of site visits for projects that will go forward next year. We were seeing very early on, as early as like before Memorial Day, contractors were saying we're booked for the year. So we had a lot of plans done with our partnership with Washington Conservation District and Ramsey Soil and Water. So hopefully those will get good bids and be able to go on the ground next year. This is just a breakdown. I always add to this every year, but showing where all of our stewardship grant projects are since the program started in 2006. We're at about $8.1 million spent, 477 projects in, and then average project cost close to that $17,000. Yeah, just kind of gives you a good idea of where the projects are located, how they're spread out throughout the district, and maybe where we can prioritize a little bit more as we look at this. And then our targeted retrofits, you saw this in October. I gave an overview of our kind of decade in review of our targeted retrofit program. Big success. We've had 36 churches, schools, and commercial sites installed since 2013. And then I'll talk a little bit more about our 2023 projects and upcoming 2024 projects. But it's great to see that variety, and yeah, it was fun to do that overview. Mercy helped a lot with that, but to see how successful we've been in the last 10 years. And had like a lot of good interest too from other agencies. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so our BMP maintenance program continues to be a big success, both parts. So we have our stewardship grant program where the grant recipients can apply for maintenance grants. So you see that kind of cost that adds up each year. We were at about 53,000 in maintenance grant funds for 2023. This year, about $10,000 went left unclaimed. I think that's due to, you know, some people just honestly forget about the grants. I don't know how many notices I send, but some people, as they reach, you know, it's a 5-year grant. As they reach year 4 and 5, they're doing more of the maintenance themselves. You know, they don't need to hire it out, so they're able to cover those costs, which is great. But still, I think a big success. I think it helps push people if they're a little bit on the fence, if they want to do a project, but they're hesitant because of maintenance costs, helps them go through, and we're seeing good success. A lot of people are hiring contractors at least those first 2 to 3 years, so really helps those projects get off the ground. And then our kind of BMP maintenance program for our targeted retrofit sites and some of our natural resource sites, we had a new contract awarded earlier this year, and we awarded it to 3 contractors. So we'll work with them for 2024 and 2025 as well. And a handful of sites, I think we have about 30 this year, including Maplewood Mall, and then some of our past school targeted retrofit sites. And then I think we're at about 10 of our natural resource sites on there. So that's great to see, and great, you know, working with a variety of contractors. Some need a little more hand holding than others, but it's still good to see a lot of work getting done. Our 2023 retrofit projects, you've heard a lot about these throughout the year, but our Arbogast underground filtration system went in Shoreview. That one used some of our stormwater impact fund dollars, as well as watershed-based implementation funding through the Clean Water Fund. So kind of nice to use those dollars. And that one's pretty much done. You know, a few touch up things here, but that one was great to see, and see how that functions next year. I think water quality is going to be monitoring that. And then Roosevelt Homes, phase 1 is underway. They should be done next week. A few little delays to get it started, but overall with the rush timeline, I think it's going well. And then we're excited, talk about phase 2 and 3 coming up here, but this phase was just for the basin work, so they won't be planted, they'll be temporarily stabilized, and then we'll look at stabilizing next, or adding native plants next year. Lake Owasso phase 2, this was our, what are we on now? 1, 2, 3, 4. So our 4th large shoreline restoration project in the district. So we started with about 16 properties on Snail Lake, and then about the same number on Twin Lake. And then last year we did, 10 properties on the north side of Owasso. And then this year we did these 8 properties on that southeast side in Roseville. So these ones were very large, linear footage. They have very, it's a lot of reed canary grass and other invasives that we'll be battling, but we were very upfront with everyone, you know, we'll be doing the 2 years of maintenance, and then they all know that what's required of them going forward. So no secrets there, hopefully, but we're kind of taking a pause on these now. It's a lot. So a lot of coordination and whatnot. So we're still doing maintenance on those other 3 areas. Snail Lake is now off of our maintenance grant, so we're continue overseeing those other 3 areas and then decide what we want to do next. But overall, huge success. We had a number of people on the other side of Lake Owasso, and then even some people in this phase 2 area that have come forward. And actually one stewardship grant you approved today saw that his neighbors had a great project and wanted to do it on his property. So that's great to see. Our 2024 targeted retrofit projects, also projects that you've been hearing about throughout the year. Pioneer Park, we approved, you guys approved the bid last month to Peterson Company. So that'll start in the spring. We're excited about that. That's at the park in Little Canada down the road. And then Woodbury Target is our 3rd and final Target store in the district. So installing 2 large filtration basins there, those green blobs on the plan there. So we're working to have, well, I think 90% plans, just when I saw those in my inbox this afternoon. So we'll look at those and then get those to Target to review, and the board should see it again January, February.
Yeah, I think February.
Yeah,
I think request to put it out to bid is February.
Okay. Yes, so another good partnership there. And then Roosevelt Homes phase 2 and 3. So phase 1 wrapping up, and then phase 2 will be planting the basins and then planting a large hillside with natives that they're currently dangerously mowing. So it'll be nice to get some other vegetation in there. And then phase 3 probably next year as well, but looking to do some other improvements to help with some of their localized flooding and get rid of that issue that they have with standing water in the parking lot, and then standing water that gets into the maintenance facility and playground area. All right, so 2024, we are proposing to keep the same water quality priority areas. So those are highlighted in blue. Everything's the same as probably the last few years. We haven't changed anything. So these are our at risk or impaired water bodies. Yeah, so keeping that. And then if you can see, sorry here. So this red area here is currently what we just call our equity area. So we've tried to target projects in this area, and then I'll just flip to this right now. So back in June, you heard a little bit about how we're working with Father to redefine those equity areas using the, Ramsey County has a social vulnerability index, as does CDC. So looking how to combine those and figure out how to incorporate those into our stewardship grant program. How do we offer more funding in these areas? How do we prioritize projects in those areas? So it's kind of hard to see, so we're done. adjusting this, but these yellow areas are the priority water quality subwatersheds, just so you can see how they overlap with the proposed. And again, we're gonna have to think of our terminology for this, but our socially vulnerable areas, or equity areas. So we have the darker blue, kind of that highest vulnerability. And then we cut out, so we have that, as one proposed funding level, looking to fund projects residential and kind of that larger scale project size at 100% funding for those areas. And then these lighter blue falls into that medium vulnerability. So looking to fund those kind of based on like as needed, and we haven't quite defined that, I guess, but people would be eligible to apply for additional funding, or maybe we pay the contractor directly. A lot of times, a rain garden project could be, or a shoreline restoration, $10,000-$15,000, where normally the homeowner would have to pay for that out of pocket, and then we reimburse them. It's a lot of money for most people, so is there something they could, ask us to pay the contractor directly for our portion? Yeah.
So I'm happy that it's like grown. That's awesome compared to the previous.
Yeah.
How did we factor that into the budgeting? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it's a good question. So we have I would say a very generous budget for programming this year.
Okay.
So that could be something, and obviously you see it every month, but I think that amount increased this year. We're allocating to that to enhanced street sweeping, but given the amount of carryover we've had each year, it seems like, I guess I don't know. We'll see how it.
Next year effectively and judge.
Yes, yeah. But definitely something we can keep in mind, if we get to the, at some point in the year and we're running out of funds, do we save some specifically for these high vulnerability areas, or, we always have that ability.
Well, and in the text, you kind of highlighted there might be some scaled amount of compensation for medium vulnerability areas now that we've introduced some gradation. So I was curious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do. So the social vulnerability, if somebody's in a dark gray region, they have a higher chance of getting their grant funded, and they'll get funded at 100%. But when I look at this, one thing I notice is that the areas of yellow seem to not include the majority of the highest vulnerability neighborhoods. And is there a way to somehow, I don't know, get more of those vulnerable areas in the yellow? Or, we're just going where water flows and where our needs are.
So
And
you're basically saying that those darker areas would be yellow?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that those yellow areas were just based on purely water quality impaired and at risk, and that we want to add those other areas.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah, okay, we'll figure out how to map that.
Okay. I'll just envision yellow around all of
Yeah.
That's how that's exactly what it is.
And for that, oh, sorry, Ben, but for the dark blue, we would incorporate residential as well. So currently the yellow areas are just those large scale projects that we fund more. So these would be residential as well.
My question kind of goes with Pam's. We're trying to protect water quality above all else. So I like the idea of including more of the yellow areas. Are we going to be in the future, maybe not as the first phase, but like for example, my house falls in a blue area. I would consider myself being the target of social vulnerability, as well as, the south shore of Lake Phelan, some of the lake homeowners. Are we going to be looking at more of an investigation? Are we serving who we're looking to actually serve with this fund?
Right. Good question.
So we didn't want to get into any sort of like asking for personal information as far as are you eligible for that or not. So we do want to cover, we'll say 100% in those areas. But what I think this does is designate areas for us to do outreach, right? So that we're focusing in these areas to try and seek out people that would fall under those categories, but we're certainly not, we don't want to get into the whole you're who we're targeting, you're who we're not kind of situation. So, we're saying that there's a more majority in these areas that could use the extra assistance.
When you say outreach, you're thinking also schools, churches, and those types of locations. That definitely could use this.
Yeah.
And then like Paige was saying, you know, for the ones that are in the more medium vulnerability, you know, it's more of a, we might not actively seek out as many projects in those areas, but if somebody can get us them in one of those areas and said, I'd really love to do this, but I can't upfront the cost, and then we'd have some flexibility, I guess, to, like Paige said, maybe we pay the contract directly instead of picking a reimbursement. Scholarship like they're asking, more assistance.
A lot of those blue areas overlap with the yellows too.
Yeah, right.
So as you progress through, is there gonna be additional scrutiny and maybe criteria considered as those programs come? Just out of curiosity, or are we saying we're gonna see in 24 how it goes and then we can adjust? I'm just trying to get a sense on what y'all are thinking.
Yeah, yes, all of that. Yeah, I think it's always a work in progress. You know, if we can start this way, we can change mid-year too if it's getting too hard to manage, or we come up with better ideas to refine it. But I think the idea would be that we try this for 2024, and then if we need to refine it or come up with other options for the next years.
Because I'm thinking of it, and there are two factors that will affect the program. One, well, I suppose you could add the interest, but I was thinking funding. And a second factor is, you mentioned, Paige, that gee, we've got a lot of projects, so staff ability to manage is another consideration. I guess I have a suspicion and kind of a hunch, but I'll ask, from the funding side, since the stewardship program has been in place 2007, 2006, have we ever spent all the money?
I don't know that we've spent, it's been like allocated, so with like some carryover and whatnot, so there have been a couple years
There's
where.
been a couple where we've either paused on, you know.
Yeah.
Accepting more applications, or we've allocated more funds from other sources.
Yeah.
to cover.
Yeah.
Because we were getting close. I mean, we've been close a few years.
Yeah.
But typically, like you said, that we might allocate money for that year, but we're not, it's not all getting spent in that year, so there's, you know, good flow.
Yeah.
We've been pushing to increase that fund over years, so to
Yeah.
push more
And
projects.
it has, yeah, I think like when I first started with the program, I don't remember what year that was, but it was like 800,000, and it's slowly gone up. And there have been years where, you know, maybe a city comes in and they said, oh, you're gonna apply for $100,000 grant, but they're not going to do the work till the following year, and then we'll ask, well, can you wait until the following year?
So on the other factor, from just a staff ability to manage as projects increase, are we at a point of, we're at about the, you know, what we can manage right now, or is there still some room? And do we need to think about, if we are close, do we need to think about ways to relieve that? I mean, obviously other staff, but you know, contractors or.
Yeah, I would say thankfully we have a good partnership with Washington Conservation District and Ramsey Soil and Water, so they do a lot of the you know, initial site visits. And we have, on that note, we have changed our original or initial site visit from, you know, pre-COVID, it was all, we met with everyone on site. A lot of those don't go anywhere, so doing that initial phone call, virtual meeting, that has helped a lot. But they do a lot of the construction oversight, and yeah, so that's a great partnership. And then we all, you know, we can utilize BAR.
Also, I would say, you know, based on the new org chart that we've been talking about for a while, there is, you know, a staffing position too that would relieve some of those projects from Paige's plate, you know, so that we would have some extra staff support as well.
So with the partnership and with the staff resources kind of shifting a bit, it sounds like there's still an opportunity to really continue to push this. Funds are there. We don't necessarily need to think about adding a bunch more. I mean, I'm just trying to get a big picture sense
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I would say it's,
how to where are we at? Because we're talking about prioritization.
Yep.
But part of that also is maintaining the integrity of the outcome.
Yep, I would say, yeah, that's still all high. Yeah, I would say the biggest, I don't know what the word is, like delay in projects is actually contractor availability. So sometimes it's helpful if we say, oh, you know, we're a little backed up, but you know, that gives contractors a little bit more time and whatnot. So, yeah, but overall it seems great. You know, a lot of these good projects go on the ground. You know, we can't do as much maybe hand holding as we need to, but we also have a good relationship with a lot of the contractors that people use. So not that we can recommend anyone, but we have a list of contractors that do these. We've worked very closely with most of those, so they understand how our program works and, you know, when to call us, when we should be out there. Yeah.
My last line of questions, in terms of outreach, have we done, this isn't maybe the right term, but kind of more of the shotgun approach, or have we done more of a saturated type approach where, you know, we like some of those dark blue areas, we really get, hold community meetings, do some you know, mailers, emails, or, you know, kind of very targeted and very aggressive to a lot of potential locations. Part of this is if we get some projects going there and they've heard about it, just the nature of people, some are gonna say, yeah, I wanna do this, and some are gonna, and then when they see it, they might jump in too.
Yes, yep. So I would say we've done both ways. We want to avoid what you were just talking about where we get oversaturated with projects. So it's finding that fine line, and I'm actually meeting with Lauren, our communication person, tomorrow to talk about that. So we'll bring that up and see what the best approach is. We've done a number of, and we're trying to do more, like public events where there's, you know, maybe a farmer's market or even a special event where we have a table and talk about our program and get to people that way. Working with, there's an organization, the East Side Area Business Association, that covers the East Side of St. Paul. So getting in more with them and doing outreach that way.
Do you have a table at Waterfest for that?
Yes.
No, we looked at a number of models when we began talking about social vulnerability. Did you end up choosing one or the other? Did we create, or did the watershed create its own index and overlay?
Yeah, more, well, combining. I don't know if you want me to.
Well, no, we actually, well, that's up to you.
How in depth do you guys
If you
want
want to do a deeper dive on what this is, we do have some slides, but ultimately we went with the CDC Social Vulnerability Index because well, we like that it's coming out of the CDC. We like that some of the neighboring watershed districts are using it. We like that it's automatically updated every time there's a census, and it just seemed to be the most user-friendly. So that's what you're seeing there. And that's made up of several different layers. I think it's like 12 or 16 layers of data that all represent different kinds of vulnerability, whether that's people who don't own a car or, you know, income levels or, you know, education levels, whatever. So this is a composite number, you know, rated from 0 to 1 about how those layers of vulnerability stack up. So we did end up going with something that was already created, which we kind of liked, because anytime you're making your own, then you're in the business of deciding who is deserving and who's not, and that gets a little sticky. So that you're seeing the CDC one right there.
That's helpful, thank you.
I went back and reviewed some of the discussion on it, and this one seemed like it was like didn't have the number of negatives, maybe another option.
Yeah, yeah.
St. Paul one.
Yep. And I think Mercy Cap Region's using this too, right? Is that what we found? Do you remember? I think Cap Region's using this too. Yeah, it's familiar to a lot of your neighbors, which we like as well.
It's updated every 10 years.
Yeah, and you don't have to do that. You do it for you. So.
Okay, any other questions on this? Keep going, just, it's a busy meeting. So back to 2023, our enhanced street sweeping program. You know, in 2022, we allocated some funding for the city of Woodbury to do some enhanced sweeping, and then this year, offered funding to, well, yeah, these 5 cities here. I don't have all the numbers back yet from all of them, but from what we've seen, it's a big success. Everyone was very grateful and appreciative of being able to sweep more. I heard from a number of cities that they got calls from residents noticing the uptick in sweeping and people noticing that different sweepers were out. I don't know, people have a lot of time on their hands, I guess. I didn't know that people would notice that, but that was great. I will say, I know we're gonna come in, I should say, we're still waiting on numbers from one of the cities, I think Oakdale. But overall, we're under that total amount. And I think we will be once Oakdale gets in, but they still were able to get those number of sweepings, but I'll have more. We're working on all the data and get that to you, hopefully next month, just to see, but overall, big success. For Little Canada and White Bear Lake, I oversaw, like, we hired a contractor to do that sweeping work. It was, I don't want to jinx it, but way easier than I thought. We only got 1 bid for the work, but the contractor was great, very responsive, and yeah, no complaints from either city, which was great. And he was actually able to get in an extra route of sweeping throughout most of the area, just given the fall that we had, so that was nice. City of Woodbury, there's a picture here of their new sweeper wrap, so that was also something that we partnered with South Washington Watershed District. It's hard to see, but both of our logos are on there, so we were able to help review the design that Woodbury worked on, and then split the cost of that with South Washington. And then they had a name the street sweeper contest, and Obi won Clean Obi. Yes, so, yeah, I don't know, I don't have the list, but they had some really good
city fun.
names, yeah. Yes, I think Barb put in a few.
We put in like 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, so that was great. Yeah, so again, I'll show you those results next month, and we are proposing, so our overall stewardship grant budget allocated for next year is 1.25 million, right? That's big when I say it out loud. So we're proposing to set aside 250,000 for the enhanced street sweeping program. Looking to offer that funding to probably those same cities as well as other ones, expand that a little bit more, and whether the cities are able to manage their own, contract, or have their own city staff do that, or if we look to hire a contractor too. So we're still working out those details, but we'd like to set those funds aside, and then just like we did this year, we would come back with those exact requests when those are ready. But we would like to be able to offer it to our cities so that they can get in some more. This year it was mainly additional sweepings in the fall, but we'd like them to be able to do some additional spring sweepings and in the summer if they are able to. For that.
And just as a point of clarification, you're thinking we'd still go with the same partner cities, or you're gonna broaden it out?
We're gonna look to broaden it out, yeah.
So not just more sweeping throughout the year, it's also broadening.
Yes, yep, hopefully a little bit of both. I think those cities that we worked with this year would, they seem to be like able to handle that and not a problem, so we'll offer it to them, as well as, look at our study to see where those other top priority sweeping areas are located. Or if we want to hire a sweeper to do those areas, we work out those details.
No, and I love that we're doing this, but like, some cities sweep already a lot, some cities don't sweep at all. And how are we avoiding having, like, the city of Oakdale, who already sweeps a lot, just taking the district money and instead of sweeping 10 times themselves, they sweep 6 times themselves and take money for 4 times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Question. I mean, we're assuming now, we know what they usually do, so they're still doing that. Most of the cities are doing that with their own staff, and then they hire a contractor for what is additional.
That's sort of like trust system.
Yeah. Part of the study to say, what are they currently doing? What would we want them to do more of? And then we were paying the difference essentially. But you're right. I mean, we don't know for sure that they're doing all that they said they were going to do, but
And there was a prioritization suggested in the study, if I recall correctly.
Targeted areas, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
And
big.
city prioritization.
So we've not really had any kind of place in designating, you know, we'd like to see this area somewhat more frequently or anything. It's up to the cities.
Yeah, so we have that figured out as part of our study. We did that more detailed area, you know, like for White Bear Lake, that's what we swept was their like 2 priority areas. Like for Little Canada, we just, well, the other city, we just said sweep the whole city because we had enough funding and it's never bad, but we could get to that point where we look more at those detailed areas. All the cities have those, and I haven't checked in, but I know Roseville was actually working with FAR to look at, you know, they wanted to expand it to areas outside of our watershed district, so working with Cap Region to figure out how to prioritize the whole city. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone's put that into play yet this year, but
I was curious if you were gonna partner with Cap Region or any of the, okay. Because I know we did with the Woodbury one, I was just curious.
yeah, so Cap Region, I don't know where they're at with their study, but they, maybe you know more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're looking at, I think, just a couple of sub-watersheds in particular. I can't remember if it's Como or a couple of their specific, like, so they're doing kind of a subset of their watershed and trying to figure out what their optimization would be. So, you know, you folks did your entire district, they're looking at part of it. So, but I think they'll expand it later.
Do you know if the cities continue to measure their own TLBM removal or
TMDLs.
thank you, TMDLs with respect to the street sweeping?
We should request that information.
The reason I asked you, to get to your concern about it is a trust system, and right now they're doing it to help ensure certain qualities of the streets, water quality as well. And so as long as we incrementally continue to see benefits as this BMP, it seems like it's worth the investment. It's kind of where I was at. As long as they get.
To collect is, let's do that, collect that, give us that data and then share with us what changes when we give you this grant. That's a
It
really
becomes a
good idea.
really compelling picture, right, when you start seeing it, and it allows us to ensure that things are still continuing on track, because if they just continue to stay at the same amount, could be I don't know, unless they removed a lot of trees in the area.
Right.
But and then it would allow us to say like, here's how many pounds for phosphorus for removing by this.
Yeah, so they are required to submit that data to us as part of the grant. So we are receiving what they're collecting, so that's good. And yes, they do then will use that for their TMDL reporting in areas that.
But not all of them were weighing their stuff before,
No.
right? So this is a new layer. Yeah, so.
But if they do have that, it would be nice to request it.
Yeah.
I had one more comment. I loved the wrapped thing, and like, do we have like all of our trucks wrapped, or do you think about it, you know, like, couldn't we, like, I would love for like our district trucks to be wrapped, like, be part of the solution, keep your leaves and grass clippings out of any street. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, right
like,
now.
what an opportunity.
Yeah, right now we just have our logo on it, but that is something we've talked about in the past, and I'll talk to Lauren about that. Speaker.
Oh, please.
I did not suggest that.
That's on my construction, strike that.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the stewardship grant? I want to see the puppy picture.
Yeah, so proposed stewardship grant coverage for 2024, keeping the same homeowner areas except adding that priority social vulnerability coverage, 100%. I kept that $15,000 max. That's what we've been at. It seems, I mean, cost of things is definitely going up, but it seems like that's been plenty. I think we raised that a couple years ago and that's been fine. So proposing to keep that the same.
And the process is if they desire to go over, we can bring it back to the board.
Yes, yep, for sure. Yep, and then larger scale projects, so any, commercial site, church, school, another government project would fall into these. Other categories, proposing to keep the maintenance grant the same. We raised that last year to that $1,500 per year. That also seems to be sufficient for
that maintenance cost.
Those maintenance grants, are applicants eligible only within those first 5 years?
Typically, yes, that's the way it's worded. The idea was that we wanted people to apply for them right away, not let their project get out of hand and then apply.
Sure.
There have been some exceptions or projects that maybe went in prior to the maintenance grant going in, or they didn't know about it right away, so we have made some exceptions to that, but for the most part, you know, it's on the application when you'll be eligible to apply for a maintenance grant, so they know about it up front and then can apply as soon as the project is done. Yeah, so I think that's it on there. Have that allocated funding for the enhanced street sweeping. So now the moment you've all been waiting for. Yeah, so I guess just asking for approval. I think I have it.
I can read it. I can read it. But any further questions? Bless you, Matt. Cool. Can I get a motion to approve the 2024 water quality and equity priority areas? Approve the 2024 coverage amounts as shown in table 1, and approve staff to move forward with setting funding amounts in priority areas for enhanced street sweeping in 2024. So moved. So I have a second. Any further comments? We should probably wait for Pam to come back. The dog thing was before the meeting. We all saw the pictures of the dog, so I apologize. Not that this was the priority, but they're very adorable dogs.
Well, yeah.
We had a motion, Pam, and you had a second. You're good. Open it up for discussion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Progressing to action items.
Yeah, we have a number of them tonight. Starting first with the 2024 CIP maintenance and repair project bid. I think Erin will talk us through that.
I can talk you through that. I think Dave's also on the call. So we did put the CIP 2024 CIP maintenance and repair project out for bid. That was passed or allowed by folks last month, and we did collect a number of bids. They're presented in your packet in the memo that we put in. And what was a little surprising, well, on one hand, we got 8 bids, which is great. What was a little surprising was that our low bid was particularly low. So as you saw in the memo, it was around half of what the other bids were. And whenever we see that, we follow up with the contractor to make sure that they're sure and that they understand that they came in quite low. Because what we don't want is to have someone come on board and then have a lot of change orders or have some issues that weren't foreseen. So we do give a contractor a chance to step out, and at that point we would execute the bid bond. That's what the bid bond is for, and then move forward. So in this case, staff did reach out to Fitzgerald. Dave, I don't know if you want to speak to that, your conversation with Fitzgerald.
Yeah, we've reached out to him to make sure that he was still comfortable with his bid and how everything went. We gave him a few days to double check and look at everything and to confirm that he was still comfortable with everything and the process and the staff and everything. He did. He didn't have any issues with it. He did make one math error. Gosh, what was it? It was the West Vadnais cattail clean out. He did forget to leave a 0 on that, but almost minus the 2 bolt ramps and the clean out, he's done all the work for us in the past, so he knows exactly what he's getting into. He does a fair amount of pond clean out, so I don't foresee having any issues with it, and we will be cautious and critical of any extra change orders or questions, just as Erin was alluding to on that, is we just got to make sure we're watching that.
Yeah.
What kind of bound do you put, or do we put on a bid like a 240? Is it against the 390, 90% bid confidence that was provided by BAR? Like, so as you guys judge change orders, it makes sense, you're finding things, that's acceptable. But if they end up coming out with like 100K, 100,000 of change orders, it technically falls below our best bid from BAR. What happens?
We don't just rubber stamp that because it's still below our estimate. So
good.
our estimate, you know, that's what we are thinking the project will or could potentially cost. And it also incorporates some of the unknowns that are out there about, you know, what's the market? And, you know, that's been changing a lot lately. And so no, once we get a bid, then what we're doing is we're following the specifications and the contract language to the letter. So if Fitzgerald, for example, were to come back with a huge change order, we would have to judge whether that's appropriate given the scope and the way things were written out in the specifications. And that would have to be judged on a case by case basis. So no, and in fact, I'm not going to take us down too much of a rabbit hole, but we are going to be bringing to you folks at some point a historical look at how, you know, for the CIP, for example, our opinions of cost have and the contingency bounds we put about them compared to the actual bids and change orders and how a project lands, just to give you a sense for what that can look like. I don't have that here tonight, but we'll show you that going forward. But no, I mean, going forward, we would be looking at his base bid because we laid out everything we want to do in this project. They said, this is the cost we'll do it for, and then that's a firm agreement.
Let me just speak from a budgeting standpoint. So I do use, you know, BAR's engineers estimates. Or probable costs, to budget for projects, right? So when you're saying, you know, like, are we going above, that's, you know, the budget that we are allocating in our CIP maintenance and repair. So we still do kind of.
They're still related
things to
I
that.
totally get the related. It was almost $500,000 difference between the top and the bottom.
That's not typical.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I do know Fitzgerald excavating, we've seen multiple times. It was surprising.
Yeah, and you know, whenever we go out for public bids, what we're coming back to tell you is who we feel the lowest responsible bidder is. And in this instance, yes, they're the lowest, that's for sure, but they're also a known commodity and they would be deemed responsible. We know them, we worked with them many, many times. So Tracy, I don't know if you want to chime in. I mean, we did reach out to Tracy as well to make sure we don't usually see a standout like that. So Tracy, I don't know if you want to speak to.
Well, my only comment is it would really be difficult not to award it to them. I mean, you did point out the error and they had a chance to back out of the project if they wanted based on an error. So now I think, you know, Val, it will just be a change order based on any type of change order that can't be based on their underestimate, but materials were different. The condition of the soil was different. You know, it'd have to be something we'd otherwise would do a change order for. But it is concerning because you do think that this could make it right for that. We had a little bit of history with Fitzgerald for a while when we first started it. It wasn't so great, but our most recent workings with Fitzgerald have been pretty positive. So I think we would have been hard pressed to not award this bid to them.
Any further questions? Okay, do I have a motion to, it's a long one. A motion to accept the bids and award the 2024 CIP maintenance and repair projects Fitzgerald Excavating and direct the staff to prepare and mail the notice of award, prepare the draft agreements, and review the required submittals.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor, or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. So the second one is, so we have a number of policies here that will be, you know, become effective at the beginning of the year. So I've included them here. First is the earn, sick, and safe time policy. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions about that.
I have one question just for point of clarification.
Yeah.
So there was the last sentence of the earn, sick, and safe time policy, which I've read and I'm agreeing with. I'm curious about the statement meaning. This policy as attached provides a benefit above and beyond the state minimum requirements in a reasonable way for the district employees. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, so like, for instance, the state law requires 1 hour of ESST per 30 hours worked.
That's
So, and in this case, to make our accounting a little easier, we did 2 hours per pay period for our seasonal. Instead of looking at just the 30-hour blocks. Most of our seasonals work 40 hours a week, full weeks. And then for full-time employees, we have 4 hours per pay period. So we definitely go above and beyond, as well as the accrual opportunities for full-time employees as well.
Further questions? I just wanted. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the earned sick and safe time policy?
So move.
Second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Second one is a domestic partner benefits policy. This would make domestic partners of our employees eligible for health insurance benefits, as well as, like I mentioned, I think, beneficiary dental insurance, family medical leave acts, and also the ESST doesn't apply here, but bereavement as well.
Very happy to see it. Any discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the domestic partner and benefits policy?
So moved.
Second. No, I can't second.
All right.
Well, you can. Okay.
Oh, I can?
I believe you can. You just choose
Okay,
it.
sorry, yes. So, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next one is our Metro INET acceptable use policy. I've asked you also to sign that for acknowledgements, so if you haven't done that yet, do that before you leave. This is through our JPA with the Metro INET, security, safety of our computer systems, and I would say the most significant item in here for you all is that they're asking us to no longer allow forwarding of emails.
Oh, good Lord.
To personal email account?
Yes. And so
That didn't come across.
Oh, thank goodness, I really know. I really know how to do that.
So I have some information I'll be emailing to you, separate from this, to make changes to that and to work with you to find other solutions to.
So what I recall from the conference, and when they went over the different legal tools, effectively that exposes all personal email that is forwarded to audit.
Yes, and from Metro INET's point of view, it's also a security risk. Just having any connection to outside emails outside of their system. And it's related to that, and also just having automatic forwarding of information.
Does that mean I'll receive no more emails for?
I can work with you on how you find your.
Like, I haven't
Or put it on
logged
your
into
phone.
my INET account, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, we can work with
Okay. Any further discussion? Debate it. Do I have a second for, do we have a motion to accept the 2024 Metro INET acceptance use?
I know, no longer approve, I'm sorry.
Have you-
So moved, so moved. Really good job, I'm joking, so moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I just make a mistake. All right, there's a link to the governance manual.
There's a what?
There's a link to the governance manual.
What's that?
Roles and responsibilities. You need to check our INET.
Oh,
More frequent ways. to
Included. You are allowed, to receive your Metro INET, put it as one of your accounts on your mail client, on your phone, or, on your computer, but.
Yes. It's good. Just
It was the issue that I won't forward to our personal.
Yeah,
And then, oh, that's good. I like that.
you don't want it.
No.
I
I
only
like-
have one, it's my U of M account, I use it for everything.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, I mean,
Everything forwards there, if it doesn't go there, I don't see
it
it.
is better for open meeting law stuff
It is.
too, so, yeah, just keep everything,
That's just.
yeah.
Oh, board meeting dates.
Yeah, the next one is just looking ahead at the year to come and some conflicts with board meeting dates. So I just thought I'd throw them all in one motion. Do you have any comments or questions?
Question on the closed meeting that we typically have as a review.
Yep.
Is that something that we declare as part of this, or is it
No.
okay if we say, hey, it's
Yeah, these are just regular monthly meeting dates. Any special meetings are noticed
Separately.
as they're decided, yep.
Just wanted to ensure that.
Mhm.
Any discussions or questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the above board meeting schedule with the proposed changes to the July 2024, December 2024, and January 2025 dates?
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, the next one is a stormwater impact fund budget transfer. Anytime we're transferring funds from one fund to another, it requires a resolution and a approval from the board. Kind of went into a little bit of detail, but it wasn't clear. Happy to answer any questions about. This case is a little special. It's not something that you'll see often.
Do we have a resolution or a plan to support the water quality and inundation concerns if the BMP doesn't work?
So
Like what's the, I don't understand, I understand the process, the BMP failed.
Yep, so
Do we have a-
we're not counting that BMP for water quality purposes.
Right.
They still, I'm assuming, had to meet any flood
Inundation. Yeah.
inundation, flood risk concerns. But from a water quality standpoint, then they paid into this fund and then we'll use those funds to provide water quality somewhere else.
And it was a basin, right? So that will hold water during a rain event. And so I was just, we're
There
okay.
is some inherent water quality being provided via detention and slow infiltration.
That's.
Yeah, but yeah, then they're required to still maintain the basin shape and size and vegetation for their maintenance agreement. But yeah, it's not drying down as quickly as we would like to see.
Would we typically hold the escrow for any reason beyond this point?
The permit was closed last year, so.
And that's when you would send me.
Are there any budget implications from the fact that this occurred, I believe, 4 years ago, and it's coming into the fund at this point, really would be available in 2024? I mean, that's like a 5-year with, there isn't, and like the state, I'm familiar with this,
No.
you know, the biennial, and if you don't use the money. you're
No,
gonna
we
lose
don't
it.
have any requirements like that, so we keep that in the stormwater impact fund. We track that based on subwatershed, and then as we do projects within those subwatersheds, we'll pull those funds to use them for those projects. And we do have a stormwater impact fund planning document that outlines the process for.
Good question. Any further questions or discussion? We have a motion to approve resolution 2305.
I move that we approve resolution 2305.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, the last one is our final 2024 budget and certifying the final levy for 2024. As you'll see in the packet, from the September meeting where we had about a 6.5% increase in, now I'm asking you for a 3.67% increase based on what I'm projecting for the carryover as well as our project needs for the year. I've updated the table and the breakouts based on, further information, both from BAR and from staff on project needs for your consideration.
Do we need a motion on that one?
Yes.
Yes.
And we have a
I
resolution.
move to approve the budget. Is there, I can't find the
Yeah,
place
there's
where
a
you
whole-
told me what to do.
Yeah.
What, 2024?
To approve the proposed fiscal year 2024 general fund and CIP budget and adopt resolution 2306.
Yeah, second.
Further discussion? I think everyone will appreciate that you did your best to get it as low as possible, so greatly appreciate it. And last comment to make on that is we have a really ambitious next few years ahead of us. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
I think at any time we can show, you know, that this money is going right to projects, I think that's helpful too.
I agree. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nice work. That was a lot of action items for one.
Yeah, that was.
We had to close this year. So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hand it over to you, Tracy, attorney.
Yeah, thank you so much. Kind of a busy month on our end too, besides looking at the Fitzgerald bid. Lauren actually was working on the West Vadnais boat ramp agreement and the Grass Lake ramp agreement with Ramsey County. The Fish Creek tributary project, we're continuing to work on getting surveys completed. We have 3 of the 4 of the surveys completed and sent to BAR. And we worked on a Pioneer Park stormwater reuse project. So few things that the district turned to us to review for you, and I think that they're all in order. So if there's any questions on any of those, let me know, but it's a nice month.
Any questions for Tracy? Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
So board discussion topics. There was one topic that we wanted just to talk through. Ben and I both attended the Minnesota-Washington conference. Thought it'd be nice just to carry back kind of some of the takeaways that we had in that discussion. I probably attended maybe 70% of it due to other work commitments that I had. So I apologize. Ben, I know in the morning for the actual delegates, which I greatly appreciate. But there was a lot of wonderful topics. And just from a social standpoint, meeting other watersheds and sitting through their presentations and understanding what they consider and have to do day to day versus there was a story that stood out to me about an administrator nearly getting punched in the face by a farmer. As I sat in there, I was just, I took notes on like issue resolution because she had a wonderful she had a phenomenal talk. We had also a couple of our own presents. I missed unfortunately those. The other piece was there's some really interesting things going on both technology wise, and there is an interesting direction that I can't remember. There was a watershed near the St. Croix that might be worthwhile considering looking forward as we consider different actions for future years, where they've set a really ambitious goal, or what they've concluded looking at some of the publications, and I'm just going to look at the publication real quick that I read. It's a Minnesota's vanishing natural shoreline, where they started actually linking some of that vanishing shoreline potential quality issues, concerns, maybe just the depletion of the habitat, really the ability to sustain life. And so there's this group actually set a goal of having 75% of landowners around the lake shoot for a 50% natural lakeshore, which is just a really interesting concept. So they use DNR. So there's a bunch of nuggets learned that I think we are going to make for some interesting board topics in the future, as we all kind of learn together on them. In addition to, there's a handful, but I won't drain all of them now. They'll come up when we talk agenda.
I don't have a whole lot to add. Yeah, there was a lot of really good learning sessions. Mary, I'll say, did a very good job at hers. So it was great to see Ramsey-Washington involvement and giving some speeches. I did go to the Region 3 caucus meeting. It's interesting. You get to hear a lot of different viewpoints from the surrounding watersheds and their managers and see what they're concerned with, as well as, looking at the appointments to the Minnesota Watershed overall board. We had those votes as well as legislative sessions. And then there were appointments to a number of subcommittees. I don't know if they've made those yet. I know people volunteered for those, but yeah, it was a really good experience. I would encourage participation by anyone interested.
And then as far as the resolutions go, just to build on that, there were 6 resolutions voted on. 5 of those 6 were voted as adopted with some amendments, or as straight up. There was a fun discussion between, do you adopt the words in the gray box versus do you adopt the words in the vote? That unfortunately derailed us for like 30 minutes and a 3-hour meeting. So useful discussion. The one that was, I believe, a motion to table indefinitely was clarifying budget adoption deadlines, specifically trying to sync them with other city-based groups. It was once again an interesting discussion, but I think our budgets, our process in doing it, our levy that we just approved is something that has worked for watersheds, and so there was a lot of good discussion on that, but we all ended up on that area. The last thing that I wanted to highlight was the open meeting law utilize interactive technology. This was trying to champion, or at least say, hey, the watershed's back using new technologies or interactive video, which I think is funny, or they call them interactive technologies. A lot of discussion there, actually to be expected the way it was, but that was moving forward, so it was a good session.
Yeah, that one in particular, I think a lot of the discussion was around that, you know, our little watershed group probably isn't gonna change state law and open meeting law, but that, you know, working with this League of Minnesota Cities or the counties as a whole, could potentially make some changes to that.
It felt like one of the potential ways of doing is saying, we support this, but somebody else bigger is going to drive it. It's kind of
the new lobbyist for the Minnesota watersheds has been selected and will be working with the current lobbyist over this session to transition. So they were introduced as well at the conference. So they'll be taking those resolutions that were passed, as well as past older resolutions, you know, and working at that legislative platform for the Minnesota watersheds groups.
very fascinating process.
I'd also say it was good to see, you know, all the staff involvement. You really get a sense of how important that is, that we're a part of that group, especially for the staff here in their development. So really good to see that.
I'll also say it was reassuring to talk to some of the other staff members and then some of the more remote locations to find how good Ramsey-Washington has.
Yeah.
That was a big take home. Thank you. That's the discussion topic. Just wanted to relay that forward.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Well, Marcy, you have 3 pages of tables. Let's talk.
One by one.
I want to hear about the views.
Well, yeah, so you have probably seen occasional summaries at the end of your board packets that give you some sort of topic overview. Those were envisioned starting in 2008, when we were asked to, or we were interested in looking into products or different types of practices or trending topics that are coming up and impact the watershed and the projects that we do. And so over the years, this file got really big of all of the different topics that have been studied. So over 80 different topics have been researched. Most of them have been presented to the board at some point. And so one of the things that we decided to do this year was compile everything into the spreadsheet that you now have in front of you, both to make it a little more accessible to figure out what we've already studied. There are some topics that, you know, we've been looking at since 2016 and it comes back up, and then we can do a quick search instead of trying to sift through lots and lots of files. And then we were able to share that both with staff and with you to just kind of mull over. We welcome new ideas and topics. You'll see that I think a lot of the historical topics were around, you know, new pre-treatment devices, or, you know, you go to conferences and somebody's selling this product. And so it was sort of trying to gauge, do a little more digging. So these kind of mini case studies is what we call them. Do a little more digging and figure out, is it legit? are there things that we need to be concerned about? Are there, and then kind of keep it in mind for projects that come up, or potential treatments, because so some of them are in-lake treatments, that kind of thing. And then some of them are broader topics. So a more recent one was we looked into jumping worms or the Miyawaki mini forest method. I think that was at the request of a board member. And so we welcome those ideas, and it's likely that if it's coming to your attention, it should be coming to our attention too. So I think, again, we're just providing this for your information at this stage. But if you come up with things or hear about things that you would like us to add to the list, you can certainly consider that. And we don't have a rule necessarily of like what we tackle first. It's sort of at what seems most pressing or interesting or timely given something that's going on in the world. And so that's how this has come to be.
If Bob Johnson were still here, he'd love it. And then he would ask where the centrifuges are.
Yeah.
And I just want you to note that the links for the beet juice did not work either way.
Oh, no.
Just a little note.
I had a couple of links that didn't work, but then when I Googled it. It was thorough and I enjoyed looking back to the beginning and reading all the synopses.
When there's an opportunity for Blue Roof as you would get into the program summary, so I think it's really cool. Do you have, are you also, so you all engage with multiple watersheds? Is there like a list other watersheds are also looking at? That
They always ask us about yours.
Aw.
They often
Yeah, I mean-
ask, yeah, what, has Ramsey-Washington looked at this?
Right, well, so this actually just went through a review, an internal bar review, where, so we have a group that works, well, how do we simply say that? A lot of us work with a lot of different watershed districts, and we come together quarterly to talk about things, and this list came up because I periodically ping everybody and say like, what topic ideas does anybody have? And so because we compiled this, everybody was pretty excited to see that summary, because it was just kind of clunky to dig into that previously. And so one of the things that's been added recently, because we conferred with the larger group at BAR, was where has some of this work been implemented? So we're aware of other projects outside of the district and inside the district. We probably didn't capture everything, but it's a pretty good sense of the latest and greatest as of this month. But yes, so you're at the forefront really, and this is a tool that other entities are referring to.
But I have to say, I've always enjoyed that part of the board packet. It's sort of like that was a little negative fun at the end. I don't, so thank you. Good.
Yes, thank you.
Other than the packet, is this housed in our library in any way, or could that be incorporated for public consumption?
Are you talking about this table?
This
or-
table specifically, just everything that we've looked at and where it's been implemented.
Yeah, it was mostly meant for internal or, our use, those reports, we've talked about that. It used to be on our website, we'd pull them out separate, but it was just so many documents. But there might be a more creative way that we can link this table to those reports too, and just have that.
It'd be really cool to see a Power BI, mainly because the
Yeah.
examples is what I found
Yeah.
really interesting to jump to. Oh, they did that here.
Yeah.
and Looking at it. That was really
Yeah.
cool.
I will say one thing, we don't necessarily recommend all of these. Like,
Right.
some of these we look
Yeah.
up and we're like, I don't buy it, but we don't want to like put that in a document that's going out into the public realm, because that would be bad form for manufacturers. But we do, I mean, some of these, as you see, have been implemented, and other ones we just try to keep in the back of our mind for opportunities as different things come up. So just because it's on the list doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be recommended, but
Also, I want to mention the number one on there, the heated sidewalk snow melt system. You guys saw that at some point this past year. So Woodbury did submit a formal application, so we need to organize that, and that'll come next month for you.
Yeah, we had the proposal and then we gave feedback, right?
Was there an issue with all the links or just the couple that you only know about the couple you
No, I
tried?
was just excited about the beach use. I hadn't heard about that before and those were the only two I tried.
Okay.
It looks like it just got cut off, maybe.
Okay.
I think putting it somewhere at least internal and then
Yeah.
maybe having a conversation with Lauren, just
Yeah.
highlighting the innovative nature of this particular watershed online might be a good
Yeah.
middle ground.
Maybe highlighting some of the things that we've done that are on there.
It would be great if it could be taken to the kind of the next level of adding links to where we know these products or practices have been used. And I suspect there might be other locations, but make links to those. So gee, if we really wanted to dig in, we could go to, that project.
Oh, links to like.
See how they implement it.
Yeah, some of them are, so some of like the Mississippi WMOs, because they're really good at getting
Right.
their information on the website, but
I'm
yeah, but I think that there is more work to be done then, for sure.
I'm happy it's centralized, very,
Mhm.
especially as a technique, I like. it.
Yeah, having it all, yeah.
Do you mind if we transition to administrative report?
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you so much, Martin. Wow, 5 minutes of airtime for 8 people. That is a return on investment. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a busy month, and extended, so quite a number of meetings attended. I don't have a lot to report on the board action log and updates because I thought this meeting was actually gonna be really long because of the lots of items. So you will see quite a bit regarding those items in the January meeting. I've got the staff presentations updates for you, and then we already talked about the Minnesota Watersheds Conference. So that's all I got. Oh, and just a note, and I have it in here under upcoming meetings and dates, but we do have the staff and board holiday party planned for Tuesday, December 19th, and I sent an email as well, so hope to see you. Next time I be back in attendance.
Can we participate in the funny thing, like the picture thing? Oh, I'll ask later.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in
Sure.
California.
Oh, yeah, but yes, you can submit it.
Awesome. Any questions? Perfect. Let's go to the project program status reports. I do have questions. I'll open them up to other people first as well. I'm gonna start with A and then we can walk down, but on the A piece, when with the interim emergency response, I really appreciate the back and forth and what was shared here. When is that formal update going to be given to the board out of curiosity in terms of what you learned? Because we were at the final task of the program and I was just curious. Is that something that we could do in the springs?
Yeah, I think maybe after we hold the meeting, do we talk about that in here? Let's see. The Public Works for, oh yeah.
Yes.
So we're planning to hold, a larger meeting with all the cities together, so we can get them talking to each other about how to handle this information and data and what they're gonna do with it. And then we can, I think that'd be a good time to report back to you after that meeting. Assuming there might be some takeaways and some to-do list items after that as well.
Cool.
Consider.
So my next question's on E. Any questions between them? Perfect. So resilience study for non-beltline tributary areas. What does the bar staff has also been considering whether actions to mitigate flood risks may have a positive effect on water quality and fish? What does that mean? Could you help me understand that?
Yeah, that one's complicated. So that's pertaining to Battle Creek.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Battle Creek, boy, how far back to go with this? Battle Creek, just many years ago, was listed as being impaired for something called fish and macroinvertebrate IBI, which is a way of measuring the level of impairment that's visible in the types of species that are in a water body. So the types of fish, the size of fish, the types of macroinvertebrates, the size, locations, things like that. And so when that happens, you do a study to figure out what the stressors are. And in the case of Battle Creek, there's a number of them, one of them being altered hydrology, because Battle Creek, as you remember, has a pipe underneath it and the flows have been greatly engineered for flood risk reduction, but that has some bearing on the flow regime in the creek itself. It also has relatively high sediment loads, and there's high chloride in the creek. There's all sorts of things that are impacting fish and macroinvertebrates. And when you do a study like that, you can look across, it's not all the time that this impairment, that these high levels of, say, sediment, for example, exist. It depends on the flow regime of the creek. And Battle Creek is really, really good because of the engineering that's been done to protect folks from flooding. So when we start to think about flood control upstream and changing the flow into the creek, that becomes interesting, because then that's where at BAR internally, we've been having several meetings about, okay, if we're going to be doing that, are there ways that we could do it that would actually benefit the flow regime and benefit the water quality of the creek, because we'd be changing the amount of volume coming from upstream. So that's what that means.
Okay. That helps.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't connect
Not
to-
obvious.
to
Yeah.
you as we were going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
My next question's on and it's more of just it's really sad to hear that there's so much back and forth between North Star Estates and the city. I mean, I believe they're in a area marked for particular, like a impoverished community. And so I hope we get to resolution there. Is that something that the board can assist with, or is that something that we're just gonna have to pause, wait and see? Because that's what it kind of read as.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where it's sitting, but I will ask that team in particular if there's anything more. I think the ball is in others' courts right now. Yeah. But I will share that sentiment with our team in case there's anything we can think of.
Okay. I'm gonna continue going. Is that okay? Well, actually, the question that I was curious about is the belt line. So I don't know if I wrote down the note wrong, but during the conference there were some discussions around assistance and payments for things that are associated with the city, and then I'm learning about the Army Corps of Engineers as they go through with the waterways and like discussions there. Are there other funding sources that we could look into for the Beltline restoration as we continue forward? Or I know we are currently budgeted for it. I understand all that, but I was just curious if there were other mechanisms.
I'm not aware of anything for repair of pipes in that regard, but it's something we can keep checking on, or if you had something in particular that you thought sounded.
I wish I would have written down the actual grant that they talked about. I was like, oh, they worked grant and city construction together for this type of flow. And I was like, oh, I should have written it down. I apologize.
I don't know if the public utilities.
Oh, PFA.
That's a loan.
Yeah,
That's a loan.
actually, that is a good point. So the
Program.
Public Facilities Association or
Authority.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does provide low interest loans for
I'm just looking at
work,
like
and there's some forgiveness of those loans too.
Yeah.
for-
so it's $1 million+ investment, which is critical. And so it just was curious.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a good point. I'll reach out to them about this project.
We
and
could,
see.
yeah, that's possible.
Does Met Council have anything, I mean, from a utility infrastructure?
No, they don't typically have money for that kind of work. A lot of it's planning and planning dollars.
Yep.
Here's my last question. My comment with the AFSA work that's going down really close to our backyard. Had a lovely conversation with Sage on it actually at the conference. So it's really cool that somebody's so incentivized to try to introduce kids to this stuff. So I like the work she's doing. Those are the end of my questions.
On H, item 3. So the retrofit inventory, as I understand it, that question, does this inventory incorporate evaluation of existing ponds and other BMPs, so not necessarily the possibility of new, but existing, and the need for maintenance or rehabilitation?
No. That would be under the. Yeah, so that would be under our, well, we have a couple of other
Yeah.
things. So we have our pond prioritization study where we looked at water quality for ponds and cleanouts and prioritization of those ponds. We have our maintenance, our CIP maintenance and repair inspection database. This would be purely, this targeted retrofit is purely for retrofitting of for stormwater quality. Water quality
So retrofitting development.
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, and so that would be like the map that Paige showed earlier during her presentation of all the projects we've completed under the retrofit.
Yeah.
And then looking at the future for water quality projects in our priorities.
So the pond inventory is a standing database, or does that get revisited on any kind of schedule, or that just?
It's relatively recent. I can't remember what year we did that. Within the last 6 years, I think. Where we looked at, leverage the district's models to figure out what ponds we thought might be loading the fastest with sediment and nutrients. And which ones, might be highest, well, which ones have the highest, impact on water quality in terms of being in critical locations to remove stormwater loads. So that resulted in prioritized lists of ponds that were also distributed to the cities so that they knew which ones might have the most bang for their buck in terms of water quality and might be of the most interest to the district for them to dredge. I haven't updated that. It wasn't necessarily meant to be a living thing, because all it does is tell you, hey, this pond here is in a really critical location and it probably loads pretty fast. Keep your eye on that one.
So we, this, like she said, the cities use it and then we've seen those ponds come through our CIP maintenance.
Sure.
Yep.
I'm just, the way things tend to work. You do the work on it, cities kind of do their prioritization, and then it kind of goes through the process, and things might get either missed, or there's always new processes. And so it seemed to me something like that should have a revisit on a time frame.
Maybe at the public works forum.
Yeah, I think revisit with the cities, I think would be good. Like she said, I think the identification of the ponds was kind of a standalone thing, but maybe evaluating which ones, our cities are inspecting them, at least 20% a year. And then they're using that data along with the data that we're giving them to help prioritize their programming. But we can talk about that.
Sure. I mean, it's not a real shiny, kind of program element, but it's
very
kind of
practical.
core.
Yeah.
Well, on public works people.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are a couple things that I assume we're gonna see in January, but the Aberdeen storm filtration BMP, I assume that's coming in January. It said it was coming today, and I just wanted to make sure that.
Oh, did we not get that updated in the thing?
Well,
The payouts in here, but it's. No, the payouts.
No, there was just the update. You mean that we were talking about it?
The incorrect concrete testing.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. I was gonna bring it up if no one mentioned it. No, the way we were gonna handle that is at this point in the meeting. So, this was kind of a unique thing to have happen. I've never encountered this before. Typically, when we have cast in place concrete products, part of our specification is that has to be tested. So they have to pour cylinders that then they go test and they crush and it's in a lab, it's a controlled environment. And we had specified that the test that these cylinders be evaluated under was for to evaluate whether they reached 4,500 PSI of compressive strength. And so their mix passed our scrutiny in terms of, the menu for the concrete that they made. And they went ahead and they poured the vault and they poured the cylinders, they went off to the lab. And then 28 days later or so, we got the lab results and noticed that they had stopped the testing at 4,000 PSI, which is not what was specified. Apparently that's a little bit more typical, 4,000 PSI. So whoever in the lab just missed it. That's not the district's fault. It's not BAR's fault. That's on the contractor to do that. And so we said, okay, well, if they've got more cylinders, go crush those later, and concrete strengthens over time. So in all likelihood, that would have passed that mark. Well, they had thrown the cylinders out. So what we do know is that at 28 days, the compressive strength was up to 97 or 98% of the 4,500 PSI. But we don't have proof that it reached it. And so we, as your engineers, don't like to let that be good enough. So we've been trying to figure out what to do about that. So we've evaluated a few different options. Things like, you know, you could extract a vault itself. Well, then you're punching a hole in your brand new vault, and that didn't seem so great. So what we did instead was we reevaluated the design to see if, okay, if this only reaches 4,000, or if it's actually more than 4,000, I don't remember what 97% of that is, but, or of 4,500 is, but we looked at whether we were in trouble in terms of strength, like vehicles driving over it. Is it strong enough even if it doesn't get to 4,500? And it is. So that's not a concern. The strength of the vault is not a concern. The question is more about duration, durability. So we talked with our structural engineers, and they said, well, you know, for a lifespan, it's really kind of hard to tell. It can be 20 to 50 years. So what we ended up doing was we looked at, okay, let's say we get to 97% of 30 years. And then, you know, where our duration is essentially, that ends up being about 6 months shorter lifespan. This is becomes very academic. So what we did is we looked at, well, how much more money would you need to save now to buy that vault again in that time frame that's just 6 months shy of 30 years? And that amount ends up being, with time value of money calculations, around $3,500 to $4,000. So what we're proposing is, because we don't have actual proof that we got up to 4,500 PSI, that we instead retain $3,500 to $4,000 from the retainage that we still hold on the project. So we'll be reaching back out to the contractor to talk that through with them. We don't like to hand wave at that. I mean, it's a little, chances are it will reach that strength. Chances are it's at that strength right now, but we can't prove that. And it was in our specifications. So that's the way we're proposing to handle it. I don't know if you have any questions or concerns, or Tracy, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? Not to put you on the spot. I don't know that you heard about this one.
No, I mean, as long as the board's comfortable with that, have you had any indication from the contractor that that would be acceptable?
We have not spoken with him yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible to discuss it further at a separate meeting, just out of curiosity? The reason I ask is it seems like concrete testing lends itself to some numerical assessments with transfer functions and things like that, modeling, if you will. I assume the team hasn't done any of that.
You mean to extrapolate the data that we have?
Yeah.
No, we haven't done that.
I don't understand the origin of the requirement of 45 versus 4,000.
Yep.
Perfectly honest, but that's generally how we've looked at confidence and that ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can keep asking questions. I didn't know the scope of the problem. Now I have 100 things.
Well, what we can do is bring that back and give the board an update next month, which is not so far away. This meeting is later, and talk about how the conversations went with the contractor and whether there are any extrapolations. To my knowledge, I mean, we just don't typically come across this. This is kind of atypical.
And boring, is it because, okay, yeah, I can hold my questions until after the conversation of the contractors.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I like the track they're on. I wouldn't want to compromise the structural integrity by doing it for.
Well, and that's what
and if they didn't follow the contract, I would hold them to that contract. I like the course that's being charted.
I do as well. It's just surprising.
Is it the responsibility of the contractor to be explicit to the lab?
Yeah.
That would be the expectation, because it sounds like that wasn't communicated, and
something
the lab
got missed
kind of
with them.
Somewhere said, well, we typically don't go 4,000. We're done. So if it was on the onus of the contractor, then I guess I would be very comfortable. If it was a decision that the lab made.
But that's still on the contractor, because the lab is under the contractor.
So it's up to the contractor to select the lab.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I like the idea of holding it for the amount that we lose in terms of longevity. It's
Is your concern that, well, I shouldn't put it into words. What is your?
Concern is, so what I've seen in manufacturing is there's variance in lots. That's
Yeah.
generally been my
Yep.
experience, and so if we test not to the requirement, you could have a skew lot, if you will, at the edge of the process
sure.
that leads to actually faster weaknesses.
Mhm.
So that's my concern, frankly.
Mhm.
So but I don't have concrete as a background.
Sure.
That's different.
So you're saying that the test,
So,
there's
like-
some statistical likelihood that that cylinder doesn't reflect the whole of the
That
bulb.
is my
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And so if we didn't even test it to said requirement, that
Mhm.
worries me, but that's just because I have an ops background.
Sure, yeah. No. Tracy, anything to add?
Well, the only thing that I have to add is if you really think, Bar has looked at the possibility of the damages of the loss to be in the near $4,000, there's just not a lot of time and energy that's worth it at that level, right? You don't want to get litigious. That's why I think just really a good conversation with the contractor saying, okay, we don't know and you don't know. So here's what we'd like to do. And so just having some idea of where they're coming from and how amenable they're going to be. I mean, if we're talking it's redoing it and it's $100,000, that's another issue. But
No.
right.
Contractor's been very reasonable, but yeah, we'll come back and let the board know how that conversation.
Dave has a question.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah.
Talking with the contractor and doing some stuff. He has been working with the people that actually took the core and did the testing. And they've been doing it for quite some time. I think it's American Engineering. And he was going to get a letter, like a letter of confidence saying, this is what we see in the samples. This is what we've seen over the cores based off of the cores that you've taken and submitted. Some of them did pass. It was an average out of the cores that were going. Some of them did not. And based off of what he sees in his stuff, he was going to supply that letter. It was in the works, but he just hasn't got it to us yet. So obviously it didn't do that. That was going on. That's something that I've been working with, the owner of the company with, and I kind of talked to him about it. So that is coming. If that has any bearing on it, being that it is like one was 1.5% and the other one were 2% close. But it's the confidence of the 28-day versus the 56-day core that they had, whatever that is worth.
It's hard, right? We're talking 30 years.
Yeah.
And, but the numbers are we, as engineers anyway, our take on it is like, we have these specs for a reason. We can't just be like, it's close enough. Like, that's for contracting, that's real uncomfortable and risky for us. But yeah, so we'll see what.
It needs like an extra presentation, just the update.
It's just in the status report. Sure, we'll do that. We'll see where it lands. So we just wanted you to know that was going on. I haven't seen it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Manager comments next month's meeting. It's very close coming.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Right after the year. Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second.
Seconded.
All right, you're adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a great holiday season, you guys.